Namaste, my name is Sanat Kumar. Welcome back to the Manana Podcast. Manana is a Sanskrit word that means reflection or contemplation. In this podcast, I'll be sharing my deep, insightful reflections for you to contemplate and hence live a life of fulfillment. I hope you find great value in today's episode. So, the last few episodes have been about mental health. We saw episode 78, Feeling Low, listen to this. Episode 79, 4 Essential Tools for Mental Health Recovery, and episode 80, Protecting Our Mental Health and Mindset. In this episode, let's dive deep into how can we build the best environment for mental health. 1. Building a non-comparative environment. Major changes can come about by just dealing with one aspect, comparison. But there are a lot of changes we need to bring in order to eliminate or at least reduce this comparative environment. So, here are some pointers. Educated to become unique individuals. Rather than trying to load the same set of irrelevant data on all the students and expecting them all to turn out great within the same metric, the education system should be transformed in a way that supports the development of uniqueness within each student. One of the foremost intents of such an education system will be to make students into competent learners, not just of any knowledge, but mainly the knowledge of the self. Once they learn to learn about themselves and the world, students can easily figure out what it is that brings them fulfillment. Simply said, not everyone needs to become a doctor, engineer, lawyer, CA, or journalist. What an individual becomes should be a more deliberate choice than a choice that is highly and complexly influenced by the norms of society. We may not be able to change the laws of the nation, but we as individuals can choose to stay out of the system, and parents can choose to homeschool their children and stop comparing their kids and their test scores with other kids, or even the value of salary package of the other. We can encourage our friends and acquaintances to find their uniqueness and work on it instead of struggling in a system they don't fit in. Life aligned. Once we are educated in that manner, we'll automatically move towards what actually fulfills us. Instead of focusing on money and fame, we'll focus on the stillness within, health, wisdom, love, freedom, and self-mastery overall. When there are social gatherings, the topics of conversations will be such things as, did you meditate today? How long? Do you think there is a connection between us and the universe? Instead of gossip like, that girl has an X Slack package, she's doing good. Or that guy is the best, he has 10.3 million followers on Instagram. Deliberate choices. When you work on life alignment, you tend to move towards life in caps, which we already talked about, by deliberate choice, not by compulsion. And that can be a major paradigm shift in one's life. It's by living mindlessly and compulsively that we've made our world a battleground of comparativeness. If each individual thinks with his educated mind, as mentioned, he or she will rise to his or her best self. Being mindful of social media's effects. As mentioned in the previous episode, social media is contributing to the game of comparison more than anything. I don't have the Instagram app installed on my phone. I don't even have YouTube on my phone. If I have to watch YouTube, I go to another device. That friction itself is enough for me to watch less. And you can also choose to have a timer on your phone or on the other devices so that it helps you remind yourself and be mindful of what you consume. I'm not saying you should also do same as me and uninstall Instagram or YouTube. However, when I ask or sometimes see the screen time of my friends and my family members, in most cases, social media consumes most of one's screen time. On average, people are hooked to social media for at least 3 hours, extending up to 6 or 7 hours. Ideally, Instagram or Facebook apps itself must provide an auto timer that shuts off itself after a certain time period of usage, 10 to 15 minutes maybe. But that won't happen because all those private companies' desire is financial growth year by year, and they need you hooked for even longer durations. So what can we do? If uninstalling the app is not an option, then we can set our own timers and be mindful of our social media usage. We can choose to mute stories or statuses of selected people or all people so that we are exposed to fewer situations where we start comparing our materialistic state with others. We can choose to hide the social media apps on our phones so that we add extra steps, hence extra hard to get to those apps. 2. Compare to get better. If we can become enough self-aware, we can mindfully choose to utilize our instinct to compare to yield good. And this can happen only if you are focusing on a person's values, virtues or qualities or skills and not on the result itself. For example, a person might be rich because of his ability to envision and execute. We can try to adopt those qualities in ourselves to get better at those areas. What good values, virtues or qualities or skills you find in them that you would like to have. Work towards that if it is necessary for your ideal self, contemplating the big picture. In short, train yourself to see the good in others and try to implement that good. Do not compare is good advice if and when one is taking it subjectively and feeling low about oneself. But comparing can definitely be a great tool to learn and grow if one can see objectively and execute on the learnings. I caution you when you are using this point because we think we are comparing objectively. Soon we get intertangled and start comparing all the wrong stuff. 3. It is not funny. You might feel great pulling down the other, but imagine someone doing the same to you. Of course, you wouldn't know. A bully does not know how does it feel to be bullied, right? Your joke may not apply or hurt you, but do you think you have no aspect that can be joked about? Are you that perfect? One might argue that comedy is an art, laughter is medicine, all that. All of it is true, but it is not at all comedy in the first place if any aspect of another person is used as the subject and the other person is hurt, intentionally or otherwise. Teasing or bullying or whatever you call it that uses another person as a subject of comedy in a conversation is clearly not comedy. If we are referring the art of comedy, this is not that. Professional comedians know or at least must know that it is comedy only when there is only laughter and no one is hurt after the joke. In my language, I say it, ಹಾಸ್ಯಕ್ಕೂ ಅಪಹಾಸ್ಯಕ್ಕೂ ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು. One must know the difference between hasya and apahasya. 4. Awareness. Obviously, there isn't a problem in the world that I don't think can be solved through awareness. We need to ensure there is enough prominence given to self-awareness in every individual so that even when people talk ill, it doesn't bother them as much because they know themselves better. And we must also be aware that a human is a dynamic being. We are the amalgamation of so many things. So we must be mindful while generalizing or talking with a single scope of view. A student can also be an artist. An artist can also be a teacher. A teacher will be an achiever. A person may be all of these. And most important of all, every person is a spiritual being. Everyone is on the same journey as you. 5. Art versus content. Even this is another adverse effect of social media, but through awareness can be dealt with better. As mentioned in the last episode, we must remind ourselves and be mindful of what we consume. And the continuation of that step would be to encourage art of all forms throughout the world. So what is art versus content? Simply said, all art can be content, but not all content is art. Essentially, whatever content that's not art is noise. If we need to make a mentally healthier environment, we need to reduce the noise and increase the art people can consume. So what is art? That is probably a discussion for another day. So you might argue, one's content can be perceived as art by the other person. One's art can be considered as noise to somebody else. We'll discuss that in later episodes, but it is out of the scope of this episode. So these are just some ways we can nurture a mentally healthy environment. Let me know what else we can do collectively to nurture such an environment. I hope you received excellent value in today's episode. To know more, head over to sanatkumarnahibi.com, and if you haven't already, check out my book, The Flower of Fulfillment. Thank you for listening, and I wish you have a great day.